And my question was to Hubert, and I said, what's the difference between an expert and a master? Because we've got a lot of data on experts, and I'm curious the next level, because the sustained repeat performance seem they've got a master component, but I'm not clear what that actually is. We were at a restaurant, and he's sipping his soup, and time ticks, and it's like 30 seconds, and I'm waiting, and his brother's waiting as well. No one's saying anything, and it's close to a minute. And finally, Stuart, his brother, says, Hubert, he's asked you a question. And he puts his spoon down. He said, he wants the right answer, not any answer. And that is, fantastic example. And so that the master does take space to integrate, to think, and sometimes that role modeling of space is okay. We're not in a rush. We're thinking of the right answers here.
You're listening to Getting It Wrong to Get It Right.
So folks, today we have Richard Young on Getting It Wrong to Get It Right. We're going to have a great discussion on many levels. We're talking about leadership, people who are leaders within the sports realm and in business. So keep listening to the podcast. Rich is going to share some great insights with us today. He's going to tell us what you need to be doing to be that high performance leader. So enjoy. Richard, welcome to Getting It Wrong to Get It Right. How are you?
Hey, great, Joe. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I know we tried this a while back, but then you were launching your new book, so we sort of held off, and I wanted to do a little bit more research about the amazing work that you're doing when it comes to high performance. And it's all about measurement as well. And a good friend of ours, Dean, connected us together. And since then, Dean has been sending me other people to speak to as well because of the passion that we have for measurement. So welcome. I'm just going to hit you with a question here. Sustained performance isn't luck. It's a big claim that you have on your site. And I'm just wondering, what is the formula that you can see in high performance over your experience with 12 Olympic cyclists?
So there is some system behind every performance. So luck happens if the system allows it to happen. Well, there's a lot of folk out there with hopes and dreams, but no structure, no system. And sport proves that, like James Clear says in Atomic Habits, we don't rise to the goal, we fall to the system.
Yeah, would you emphasize sort of noise and exposing friction as well? Can you give me some examples of what you mean by that as well?
Yeah, so say a terminology that is everywhere that came from cycling, marginal gains. And so a lot of business leaders adopt that as well, that every fraction of 1% eventually adds up to success. For the British team, I ran an innovation program, and that's how I ended up in New Zealand. The New Zealanders wanted that program, so I came here and set it up here. And really, on a master message of that program, it wasn't innovation and technology and new gear. It was problem clarification. And the sports that knew what the main problems were said no a lot. So they protected a system that they knew worked. And that was where they added some small marginal gain to a system that they were convinced worked. And that was the difference. And so it's meaningful gains that the best sports find first, and then they adapt to marginal. And I see quite a bit of my work is in business and health and education, and I see that mistake happen outside of sport as well.
Do you want to stop selling and start truly growing your business? Check out our free resources. Attract the right clients and close more deals and elevate your business to the next level. Visit joedalton.ie. We're here to make it happen. Let's grow together.
That if it's new and is proven somewhere else, it must fit here. And typically it doesn't.
You've started off in sport, and I know that you're working with an awful lot of athletes, and you're even working in Ireland with the rugby team. And you're crossing over as well into business and helping business leaders. What's the correlation do you see between great athletes and high performance leaders?
Yeah. So there's a championship capability in the best, whether they're in business or in sport. In sport, it's not that hard to win once, but to repeat it is very hard. And what worked to get that first win may not work again. So like the theme of your podcast, it's about learning fast, failing fast as well. And so I see a lot of similarities across the two, that businesses that learn faster than the opposition succeed, and they become championship capable. They are repeat performers. And I see the same in sport.
Since we last spoke, I went on a journey. I don't know if you inspired me or not, but I'll maybe give you some of that credit if you want. And I kind of went, I was at a stage in my life where I was content. And content is a good thing. But I actually then went, you know what? Content now doesn't suit me. And I wanted to think more about my business leadership with my team, but also my longevity. So I decided to create disciplines in myself. So those disciplines were, I wanted to get up 2 hours earlier than I normally do. I want to go and lose X amount of weight. I want to be able to have mind, body, and spirit fully aligned so I can be a high performance leader and achieve the things that I want to achieve as a 55 going into 65. And with those disciplines, I realized that if I wanted to achieve this as a high performance leader, I had to have a healthy mind. I had to have a healthy body. I had to put in the right food into my body and everything as well. So from there, Richard, I went to the gym or going to the gym. I lost 9 kg in weight. I'm impressed with myself that I can do, at 55, I can do 6 pull-ups, and next week I'll be able to do, or next month I'll be able to do 7, and the month after do 8. But I'm also taking creatine for the mind and cod liver oil and turmeric and all these other supplements as well. And the reason I'm telling this story is because to be a high performance leader or sport athlete, there's multiple elements that one needs to participate in to get the body and the mind in high performance. What's your thoughts on all that?
It's a good bridge from the marginal gains bit. So there you go on meaningful gains. So there are components there. At first you'd say, wow, you're layering a lot of stuff in, but it's strategic. There's aspects that you raise there that are proven that they work. They are basics. There may be a big number to them, but they are the basics that work. And so that's what I mean by a system. You've got a structure to how you've shifted weight, how you've gone to the gym, and you've called it discipline as well. And there's a great book by Pressfield called The War of Art. And I don't know if you've heard of that. He's a writer, and he talks about how hard it is to write. And it's not actually writing, it's putting your bum in a chair. And that's what he concluded. And so he says, if you want to train, don't write a plan. Put your shoes by the door. And basically what you've done is put your shoes by the door. And that's the difference between knowledge experts and performance experts. So that's the bridge between business and sport as well. It's not all about medals, fans, and finals. It's about performance and delivery. Taking what you've got, even those components, and putting them into a delivery that finishes a job. And the performance experts step in and finish.
Do you think that, between your science background and your engineering background has given you that extra little edge from other people within the industry as well to be able to make these performance adjustments? Because we know the engineering mind is a gift as well.
I think the system thinking was tuned for me through that grad stuff because it's all reductionist. Physiology is reductionist. Engineering was reductionist. Medical science was my PhD. That's pure. And then PhD, you get so reduced that you're actually in one tiny little bin. But I was coaching, and that kept me in a big bin because I had to deliver for people. And I realized that all the fiddling I was doing when I was racing, filling my tires with helium, drilling everything out, coating myself in Teflon, I was into tech. Cycling is high tech, and I was into it. And when I started coaching, I realized, man, I'm wasting people's time. It looked so complicated, very attractive stuff, and it got everyone's attention. But I thought, an athlete only has 4 years. Typically, that's it. You've got one Olympic shot, and then you're out. So the world of transition is high-performance sport. People are constantly leaving. Staff are leaving, and athletes are leaving. And so if you don't have a structure, you've got a lot of people walking out with IP, and you've got nothing left. So it turned out that needed to be simplified.
As you're saying that about high performance and people with, the 4 years to either to be an Olympic winner or even get into the Olympics. And with IP coming along and technology, especially within the genetics realm, nature, nurture would be a conversation that people would have when it comes to genetics. What's your thoughts on that in high performance as well?
There are some basics on the nature. Like if you're 4'9", it's unlikely basketball is your sport. So there's a few like pretty obvious. But then when you get into the sport, the system can enhance all the, like I call it a colored palette. So everybody has a colored palette based on their genetics and their lived experience. And the right sport, the right system can bring all of that out. And in high performance, so it's 11 Olympic cycles now. And for 7, I was measuring the difference between repeat performers and the rest. And by the rest, I mean they're not yet. I'm not saying they'll never be, they're just not yet. So their system isn't quite cutting it, or they're just on the trajectory where they're just learning what's starting to work. And I compared the top people that could repeat it. And talent becomes less relevant at the top. For selection at the bottom, at the entry, for some systems, it's the main thing. They're just looking to see how often have you won, how often have you played, what have you got that's different to the rest. But as you move up, there's other enhancements that the system can bring out, good coaching can bring out, and very few talk talent at the top, very few. So there's some star athletes for sure, and it looks like a talent thing, but when you look deeper, actually, this has been cultivated for a long time here. And they may have found the right sport through their talent, but they have excelled because of support systems, what their home either did or didn't. What doesn't work teaches you just as much as what does work. But talent turns out to be less important at the top.
Are your competitors stealing your spotlight with podcasts and a book? But you can have both. 8 high-quality podcast episodes and a published book, just from simple interviews. We do everything. You just need to show up. Click the link for more details.
And it's like with ourselves here, we have sales training program under, Salescraft, and, top sales performers. They're lone wolves. They really are. They like doing things on their own. We can say, okay, we need to put them in the team. We need to work on this. But as a high performance salesperson myself, I'm a lone wolf. I like to do things, and I know all dealing with top sales professionals as well, a lot of them are lone wolves. They do offer insights and value and see visions and everything. And as you were telling me this, I go, for sport, I love martial arts. I was sort of doing it on my own. You're with an opponent, but I practice on my own. And then I love cycling, and I've cycled all over Ireland, King of the Mountains, and it was a sport that you're with groups of people, but you're on your own on it as well. And even when I played rugby, I was a right winger, but I felt I was on my own, on my own and there as well. So it's all about mindset. And one thing in life that I've learned, and I'm learning, that at the end of the day, it's about confidence and it's about self-esteem. And if you can get confidence and self-esteem right yourself, it changes the whole game. So when you're looking at metrics or helping teams or helping leaders within teams, is that the first thing you go with? Says, okay, I'm going to look at what's going on inside that person's head and to see if we can find out how confident they are, not arrogant or cockiness, but how confident they are, and let's work on their self-esteem to be a better person. Would that what you'd focus on first?
I'd focus, and I do focus on that a bit later. So that's the polish at the top. But the preparation, where I start, is values, because what we value is sometimes so hidden and invisible. We're not sure why we're doing what we're doing. And for some in high performance, they are driven by fear. They're driven by failure. They're driven by and there's a lot of spectrum in a positive way in sport. And if they're in the right system, parts of that spectrum are enhanced, but not everybody is in the confidence game. And in interviewing athletes after the Olympics, more didn't believe they were going to medal than did. Out of all the medalists, they weren't sure. And that's healthy to not be sure. And not to carry that into every minute of your day, but to have a realistic understanding of the gap between where I am and where I need to be. And sometimes overconfident, over hopeful athletes, just from the data, miss the gap. So they are convinced it's all working out okay, and there's blind spots galore. So a bit of humility, I guess, is what I call it.
Humility, yeah.
In the game have that. So it's not a lack of confidence. It's just an acceptance that I don't have it all. And I can still compete, and I could win, and I could world record, and I could repeat it. But the core of who I am and how I am is rock solid. And they don't often call it confidence. They call it clarity.
Yeah, well, even if you look at business, like when we're speaking to business leaders, when we go through a process with them and they discover what they actually do, which is clarity in their business, without doubt, without, I'm not sure what I do, but to have clear 100% clarity, the business takes off. And in a way, is there something that happens within the ether because now they have a clear vision of where they want to be?
Yeah.
And with business leaders and entrepreneurs and sports people, is it a case with them that, I've realized over the years, if you really want to get good at something, you have to practice and you have to practice, and it takes discipline. But it's also something that we haven't mentioned, focus. So when you're with a team or you're working with a business leader who wants to be better than what they are, what are the milestones that you put in place so you can actually track them to see if what you're doing is increasing their performance?
Yeah. So the clearer they are on the picture of performance, the better. And not everybody is. And this is a match between sport and business, that if you're not clear on the picture of performance, then everything you're doing is okay. And we're looking to clarify, what does winning, if it's about winning, what does winning look like for you? And what are the key components that make that happen? And sometimes they're unclear, and there's a lot of blind spots, and they make some assumptions that here's my routine. I just keep repeating this, like the overplayed 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell wrote about that. But it came from research from...
Yeah, with chess, wasn't it? Oh, no, violin.
Yeah, virtuosos. Yeah. And it's not 10,000 hours. It's 10,000 iterations, which is very different. So just spending time at something, like you said, for sure you've got to train, but you also said the other key is focus. So discipline in your example there, key. And if you've got just confidence in things, sometimes the discipline doesn't come. And so when the best leaders and best sport folk focus on discipline and system and learning faster than the opposition, which is the 10,000 iterations, how fast can I get through that? For some, it may be 10,000 hours. For some, it may be 5,000. That's a paper on my website, 5,000 hours deliberately. If you've got the right system, you can cut things down.
Yeah, but that's also to do with if you have the passion, that I can jump on something that I love doing and I can rapidly fly through it, and 20 hours feels like 5. But if I'm doing something that I despise, which I'm actually working on Facebook ads at the moment, which is, and we're developing sets on this, just as an example. 5 hours feels like 20 hours. That's it. So what examples do you have, or can you share with us where you've seen this in your life with high performance leaders and sports people?
Yeah. And you're talking specifically about the passion component.
The passion,
yeah. So a lot of talent. I do a lot of work here in New Zealand on the talent development program, and in a couple other countries as well. And it's very simple, like athletes, and we profile those in the research as well, high performing young athletes, kids, some 12-year-old snowboarders, and they're very simple, focused on passion. I just love doing this. And they sounded like the repeat performers. So at the front of the spectrum, young kids, I love doing this. My mom gets me to training. My coach is awesome. I love doing tricks. I love riding my bike. I can do it forever. And partly it's school's a bit of a bummer and I'd rather just do sport. And then you get to the top end and it's, I do it this way. We do this. This works. I've tried this. It doesn't work. And then there's this busy middle, I call it, which is everybody experimenting with everything possible. And sometimes the passion leaves the room and it becomes a metal focus. And there are many systems, whole countries, that push the metal over the performance. And that pulls people out. It pulls them into a different bin. And same in business. If there's no passion for the final product and the team I'm with, it's hard yards.
You had me thinking about all the young people who were before puberty that were great at sport will talk about the great game that they played when they were younger. And now they're in their 30s and wish they would have kept it going. But life gets in the way of so many people. Friends are influenced, school, sport doesn't become as interesting because they rather have more fun with their friends, or they've discovered girls or boys or whatever it may be. So it's a very small amount that actually push through that, who are disciplined. Is there a blame game for that? Is there a And I'm talking about because we know that people that are active in sport or people that are high performance who don't step out have better prospects later on in life. Or am I wrong? Am I delusional in my thinking?
Yeah, it's not everybody makes it, but it's a decision. So high performance business, high performance sport is a privilege, and it's all about decision. So very few at the top, the repeat, talk about sacrifice. So people who are stuck on the real passion and focus, which is what we were talking about before, are you crystal clear on the picture of performance? Because if you're not, a few other things are going to come in the picture here that might get your attention. And like I said about the repeat performers, they say no a lot. And it's a very simple no, because they know where they're going, why they're there, and what really drives them. Values, even. They know what drives them. So they rarely make excuse. So I just met a girl that suddenly killed all my training or something. You don't hear that, but you do hear that in the busy middle. Well, I can't do this. I really want to do that. I got a job. It's taken away. And so there's a stack of reviews. So thousands of athletes, coaches, leaders, doctors, physios, all of them before a major competition, after a major competition, and repeated. The excuses are in the middle. They're not at the ends. Not even the young kids are making excuses. They know exactly where they want to go and they're on their way. And then the people at the top know what to protect. They know the system. They know what to protect. The others, heavy experimental game, lots of distraction.
Yeah, for me, I think at an early age, I was contemplating becoming a priest and discovered girls, and probably that was a blessing in disguise. That was my discipline.
My best friend in high school was the same. So he was in the seminary and then got a girlfriend and said, oops, I'm out.
Get out of here. Out of here. I'm just going to talk about business. I want to talk about startups. I know that you're working in both in business and in sport. The amount of startups that collapse in the first 5 years because of multiple things, run out of money, or, the person loses the passion or whatever it may be. And there's a sweet spot then. It's really 5 to 7 years. And if a company can make it over those 7 years into the 10, they have a good chance of being successful till they retire. You're going into organizations that are well established, that may have new CEOs or COOs in it. When speaking to these high performers or people who want to be high performers, have you ever come across someone that you go, this guy isn't going to make it?
Yeah, many times. Right person, wrong role is typically in business where it's at, where that happens, where that pops up. And the non-system thinker, so and in system thinking, I mean the cause and effect, the understanding of the integration of what matters inside the company. Ones who are single-minded on a couple of things might be motivating, like a coach in the locker room, but they don't get the system. They don't understand the integration of the people, the structure, the repeated practices that need to happen as well. So it looks very oversimplified to some. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end is overcomplicated. And they can't, to me, outside of their context, explain in simple terms what their system is and what their picture of performance is. And if they can't explain it to me, somebody on the outside, keen to hear their answer, it is typically what they can't explain inside as well. So you have highlighted alignment. There's three things that appeared in the environment and the system in the repeat successful sports. And it's what I mirror into business is it's simple, aligned, and well. Those three. So the communication is simple. It's repeated. The language is aligned. The people are aligned. They're pulling in the same way. They've got conviction. They may not totally agree with the way everything's working, but they've got commitment and conviction, and they're healthy and well. And I don't just mean what we were talking about with good gym work and good strength. I mean, physically, mentally, and systemically inside the organization, it is well. And those three create space in the middle that allows sustained performance to happen.
Open to be critiqued?
Sure.
I mention that because I'm very much disciplined in myself. And, we've a team of 3 or 4 forwarders now. I don't want to be right all the time. And you can get a team or get a company where everyone is just, laughs at the boss and nods. And the CEO and the boss of many companies probably don't want that. They want to be challenged. And I'm very much, especially with podcasts, like we have a producer engineer and going, okay, how did that go? Where could I be better? And then with the team that are developing processes, I go, okay, this is what I'd like. But I need you to give me your ideas because your ideas could be better than my ideas. There's an element as well in business where, CEOs, could have psychopathic tendencies as well. How do you address the confrontational, or if you're working with someone that you're kind of going, okay, there's a great team, there's a bit of conflict here. It may be not the person. It may be just, as you said, it may be how they communicate. So I'm long-winded with this, but the question I'm trying to get to is, you can see it. You have to say to someone, look, you have to change your communication here. And are they able to change their communication?
Yeah. And they are. So it's back to our talent component as well. It's actually learning. So at the top, it's speed of learning. It's not a talent game. And some people in business have gotten there through talent. They are technically amazing, but they haven't got the people communication skill, just like you're saying, to be a top leader. And we see that in sport, athletes becoming coaches and struggle, and you can't tell why. And it's very simple why. And performance is communication. That's the core of high performance.
Yeah, I think in business, you'll get someone, especially in sales, who are brilliant at sales, and suddenly they're rewarded as to be a sales manager, and they fall flat on their face. And then that person may suffer from low self-esteem, may damage them because of what they're doing isn't a fit, or they haven't been trained to be a manager. What metrics are you looking at when you walk into an organization and you're having a conversation, and our listeners will probably be grabbing out the pens now and having a list, writing this down? What metrics do you look for, or what you scan for first before you make a decision on what road to take when you call into an organization?
Yeah. So it depends what they think the main challenge is first. So I'm there typically for something they have identified as a challenge, but your point is exactly right. It may not be the main challenge. It may be the surface problem, but there's 5 layers underneath that. That's the real problem. And often it's a communication problem, which is where the simple, aligned, and well comes in. So many aren't trained at the best in sport are good at is performance conversation. And what that means is to get the best out of this situation right now with this person who I may be deselecting as well. I may have very bad news for them, but the system requires, and this person requires, a performance conversation, meaning what can they learn from this? It's bad news for them, for the team, but what can they learn from this? And there's a high skill of the best coaches and the best managers in this inquiry model. There's so much written about an inquiry model, but I needed to simplify the whole thing into a very simple model that could be reused by anybody inside sports. So at first it was reserved just for the top. Everyone thought, well, it's only the decision maker that needs to have the capability in performance conversation, but it's everybody. And the best systems they have distributed leadership, which is what the second book I wrote is about. It's not the title of the leader, it's the distribution of leader, empowerment, agency through the whole system. So they're leading from the front. There's not enough time to wait for someone to give us the answer. And often somebody doesn't have the answer. So we've got to respond in best way to what's right in front of us, whether we're an athlete or a programmer, and it's got to align. So the system and the dial has to be moved through every decision. No wasted time.
So that brings up a question. Can you teach people to not to be better decision makers, but to be quicker at making decisions?
Yeah. Quicker and more accurate. Those do need to go hand in hand. Speed does matter.
Speed does matter. It's the advice I give to companies is that, make a decision. Because if you don't make a decision, the company goes nowhere. So you make a decision. You may make the wrong decision, but then you can correct it and make another decision. But if you don't make decisions, you're stuck. For myself, when I make decisions, I like to ponder on them before I'm a true believer now of response, not react. And I have to look at all the data points and look at everything to go, okay, this is what we need to do. How do you make people better decision makers? Not better, but quicker decision makers.
Yeah. So one thing we target is the quality of the evidence in front of them. And so sport is an excellent model at review. They do, and I find that bridge into business very important, that business has a much slower, a wider gap in their learning. There's a slower speed in some businesses that are struggling to find their flow. And in sport, they've got it's called the coaching moment. And they've got a rapid turnover, which is a lot of the work I'm doing in sport is systematizing that, the speed and accuracy. So we start with the evidence, and the better the evidence and the tighter the tuning of the evidence for the decision maker, the better. And often they haven't reviewed what's coming. It's more. I need a bit of that, and I need some of that. And 95% of the evidence that we identified being measured in sport wasn't used. 5% was being used, but it was all being collected. And the technology to collect it was growing, and everything around it was growing, but the coaches weren't using it. And so going back to the source of what's the evidence, we just need enough to make a decision. And what is that? And there's sometimes dead air, which is a good sign. And that means there's a blind spot. And with enough space, we uncover, what I need is this. And actually, I'm making the wrong decisions because I could probably delegate that. And I get the evidence and I make decisions based on old evidence that actually isn't useful to me anymore. Times have changed. And that shifts the accuracy and the speed of their decision making.
When you were telling me that, I wrote down knowledge versus experience. What happens if you're in an organization, you're speaking to a team and you're giving them all this knowledge and they're all nodding and agreeing, but then they're not putting it into practice. I've seen boardrooms where you'd be talking and everybody be taking notes and nodding, and milestones would be placed for them to the next time. This would be board of directors, and they would all leave the boardroom after 5 hours, and you'd look down and they would have left all their papers with their notes all on the table. Okay, so what was going on here? Because then you'd have the next it's like when they walk out of the room, they just go back to doing their normal thing without even taking anything on board that you've spoke about. And, for me, it makes me laugh. Have you encountered that yourself? And how do you put those milestones in checks to make sure they're doing the work because you're given the knowledge and they need to put it into practice?
Yeah. Well, like our mutual friend, Dean Spritzer, in his book, Transformational Performance. The data, so I've used his network a lot, and then I've used his system a lot as well in work. And you can tell when someone is unclear on the problem, they typically walk out without a clear solution in front of them. So there's two types of people. One who need more information, and if the presentation is kind of entertaining, if you know what I mean, that it's interesting, but it's not focused on action and it's not focused on context, there's a problem with the follow through. So there's a read of the room that happens prior to any work, and that's what is their structure of decision making? Because the group that's in the room may not be the decision makers. The problem we're talking about may not be the problem that they're most concerned about. And so back to the original point on making sure the data is clear, making sure the evidence is clear, and making sure the problem is clear. And if that triangle is sorted at the front of any work, then the action happens. The old can't lead a horse to water, but you can clarify where the water is. And everybody has intention, good intention to be a better performer. And it's just finding that hook and its context based on the problems that matter to them, and action absolutely follows.
The word that popped up in my mind when you were telling me that is people that care for the business, care for the growth, care for their own rewards for what they do. And that maybe is something that isn't spoke about a lot in business. We talk about decision making and, focus and discipline, but do we actually speak about care?
Yeah, absolutely right, Joe, absolutely right. And that's the well-being component as well. There's a systemic care of people. Because one thing we see in sport that matches business is the care of the bench, we call it. So not everybody is a star. Sometimes they get all the clout and all the media, but the system doesn't run on stars. It actually runs on the bench. And the quality of your bench, your reserves, your people behind the scenes. And so how that's treated tells you a lot about the culture inside the organization and how they're treated when they exit as well. And that's where the performance conversation comes to full circle, because it is a lot about exits. There's coaches that are fired. If you got enough losses, you're out. And business operates that way, but sport, it repeatedly operates that way. So athletes come and go. They have no idea of the evidence of decision making. We're fixing that in the sports that we work with. It's just got to be made visible. And coaches, staff, come and go. And sometimes the exit is, it says this system isn't well, it's not healthy. And everybody notices, everybody that stays notices the exit. And that's what we found in the reviews. All the deselection, everybody could talk about it. Everybody was there, and it was at the Olympics, mentioned the people that weren't there and how they were treated. And it creates this resonance, this ripple. So when you really want them to perform under pressure, they need to know this system, these people have got my back, even if I'm on my way out. And it changes the depth of the culture.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of pressure, does no one no harm. I have a wonderful wife like yourself that, always wants to know how the business is going, and she feels it necessary to give me a kick in the arse every so often. I go, why are you doing that? I think you need it. Yeah. I want to talk about just jump back to something you said there about dead air. What you do if you were in a situation where you're speaking to a team and you're delivering and your communication is spot on, and you've been very concise because you understand what the team is like, and you're addressing and you're putting it out to them to react, and there's dead air. What does that say about a team? Because also, you don't want to get the person talking who likes to hear their own voice as well. How do you balance that?
Yeah, because you come across that a lot, and online too, which really stands out because you got all the videos in front, the visuals in front of you. I always say, I can't remember who told me this, but let the silence carry the heavy bags. And so just leaving it enough that we're not looking for a speed of response. We're looking for the right response. And sometimes every system just needs us to be a bit patient to see, what's this system like? Because that in the silence is telling us something. And it's not all wrong. And sometimes it just takes a point of, hey, you're the captain. What do you think? Or you don't go to the captain and you say, hey, you're always on the bench. You don't even have to label them, but you start pulling people out. And the momentum starts to grow. But it's just being patient on that space, because someone might pipe up. And if we're not trying to keep the flow going, so I use that as a room reader, as a culture reader, but I just let it sit. And I even say that I'm letting silence carry the heavy bags. So I'm not pushing you to speak. and we may be here for a while if no one wants to say anything, and we just let it roll.
I've often, and it's funny you say that being on Zoom, online, and you've often sat there and asked a question and deliberately said nothing. And, 8 seconds could feel like 8 hours. And you're just, I'm waiting for one of you to give me, I'm not filling in the dead air, because if I fill in the dead air, I'm letting you off the hook.
Yeah. It's a funny story because I had a privilege of being with the Dreyfus brothers. Yeah. They developed the novice to expert spectrum. They have two 80-something-year-old brothers back when I saw them at UC Berkeley. And so I had, fantastic in my last job, fantastic professional development opportunities. And I always went to the best, the people that started it, like Ericsson on the 10,000 hours, went to him, Peter Senge on system thinking, Robert Fritz on the path of least resistance. And all these components that I use now came from them. But anyways, I was with the Dreyfus brothers and I'd had data on repeat medalists. And my question was to Hubert, and I said, what's the difference between an expert and a master? Because we've got a lot of data on experts, and I'm curious the next level, because the sustained repeat performance seem they've got a master component, but I'm not clear what that actually is. And we were at a restaurant, and he's sipping his soup, and time ticks, and it's like 30 seconds, and I'm waiting, and his brother's waiting as well. No one's saying anything, and it's close to a minute. And finally, Stuart, his brother, says, Hubert, he's asked you a question. And he puts his spoon down. He said, he wants the right answer, not any answer. And that is, fantastic example. And so that the master does take space to integrate, to think. And sometimes that role modeling of space is okay. We're not in a rush. We're thinking of the right answers here.
There's a balance between not knowing and...
That's for sure. Yeah, there's the other room read as well. Okay, we have no idea.
Was he talking? Hopefully someone else will answer this.
That's right. That's right.
Can you give me an example of, we're speaking about measurement. Can you give me an example of how or what measurement looks like for an organization for improvement?
Yeah. So we need to know the difference between current reality and the future. Desired future, where we're going, and there's a gap, and we're trying to close the gap. And a lot of measurement is all over the show, and we're not able to separate what's actually true about current reality compared to where do we need to be. And so typically there's a pattern of 6 questions. And I have a short paper on the website. It's in the first book, Simplify, as well. But this is what we repeat. Because the other advantage in any questioning, however you do it, performance reviews, surveys, is to ask the same questions repeatedly. It's a standard research practice. And when I reviewed the New Zealand system, all the debriefs over 5 Olympics, there were over 2,000 questions in all the Olympic and World Championship reviews. In research, that says you don't know what you're looking for, and you wouldn't see it if you found it either. You wouldn't see it if it popped up either. It's just too complicated, too much. So we needed to simplify. And mapping out the best, air traffic control does it well. Surgical teams do it well. Military does it well. The All Blacks here in rugby do it well. Matched all of that, looked at the best. What's the fit? Keep it simple. 3 questions tell you current reality. What's going well, contributing to performance? What's not going well, detracting performance? And what am I worried about? When I think about my future goals, what am I worried about right now? And that emotion word gets something better than problems, niggles. It's something deep inside. And then the other is, what would you keep, start, and stop? So out of all those reviews, the expert, the contextual expert, is in front of us. We need to ask, what would we do now? They're the experts. And that wasn't asked in those reviews. It was mostly about the past. It's gone. We just need enough evidence to inform the future. So those 3, what's going well, not going well, what worries you, that's current reality. What would you keep, start, stop, gives you an indication of what they think their picture of performance looks like. Out of everything happening, I'd keep this, stop this, start this.
And if they don't know what's going well and what's not going well?
There is a fundamental problem in that. And then there's the inquiry model, because they do know they probably can't articulate it.
Or they don't want to admit it.
And they don't want to admit it. Yeah, that could tell you something about the culture as well. But Once you get some momentum going, it becomes much simpler, and they start to hone in on a clear picture of where I am, clear picture of where I want to go. And then what this data does is show you progress. How fast are we getting to the future? 10,000 iterations.
I often say when, why do people buy a drill? And people say to drill a hole, but it's actually to hang a picture or some home improvement. And if you strip the layers back behind that, it's a vision. And everybody subconsciously may have that vision. They buy the drill for the vision. And it's for yourself or myself as coaches, mentors, to ask the right questions to see what that vision is. Because then when you know what the vision is, you can then start putting the pieces, the processes, the behaviors, the measurements in place to see if they're on that track to that vision as well.
Yeah. Fantastic example. Yeah. You
have two books. One just got published there a couple of months ago, the latest one. Why did you feel the need to write the second book?
So the first book, called Simplify, is on the system behind the structure of sustained performance. And the biggest bottleneck that I discovered in those systems was the quality of the distributed leadership in the system. Their decision-making, like you said, was too slow and too inaccurate. And there was too much weight of the titles at the top, too much risk aversion, too much insecurity, and so a lot of misalignment as well. So it turned out the biggest bottleneck in the system really flying was distributed leadership, which I call, and that the title of the book is Amplify. So you simplify your system and you amplify your system, your leadership throughout your system, and then you hit the fourth dimension. And that's the repeat in the sustained performers. They have a distributed leadership model. Yeah.
It's like chapter 1 and chapter 2.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right.
Have we left anything out I should like to discuss?
That was the other interesting part of the data, by the way, just as an aside. So the keep, start, stop, 5% of the athletes, and there were thousands in the data pool, 5% of those athletes were repeat performers. They were serial winners at Olympics and World Championships and Commonwealth Games, and they owned 80% of the no's. So 5% of the population said no, and they owned 80% of them. And the most difficult question, like you'd ask, the dead air, is what would you stop? And human nature is a freedom of missing out. And particularly if they're in the busy middle, they haven't sorted out what works yet. So I'm not deleting until I've figured out what works. And so the system around them, the coaching, the inquiry model to help them think through, what can I remove? It doesn't all matter. That's what they learned at the end, which I try to give to the people in the middle, is it doesn't all matter.
Quite interesting. Because one, when you're talking to people, for some reason, they all string towards the negative. So people can tell you what's wrong. They can't really tell you what's going right. So they home in on that. So when we're in coaching, we first ask them, what's working, and they'll stream into what's not working, and I have to stop them, and I go, I'm going to have to stop you here. I'm going to ask you later on what's not working. The question I've asked is what is working. It sort of stumbles them. But the no's, yeah, it's definitely, and it's about the 5%, but even in business, there's a small percentage of success even in business, and there's people who, you give them $1,000 and they'll make $1 million. There's people you give 1,000 and they'll be asking you for another 1,000. So I think it's mindset. I think it's the education of the person. It's the belief that they have as well. And no is so powerful. And I think no gives people credibility. So what you're working on and with the system that you're developing, how many shine at the end of it? Because there's a percentage. We all do it. Like, we're in business. We'll train people in sales, and a small percentage of them will be successful. There's a lot of them who'll take it on, but they won't do anything with it. So we notice that in business, and that's truthful. There's a percentage that thrive. What do you see that percentage being yourself?
In business compared to
in
sport?
Business, yeah.
Specifically the people that
that you,
yeah. Once the system is clear and the picture of performance is clear, it's close to, and sometimes there's bottlenecks in the system they've got. If the resistance and the friction is identified and clarified, they all succeed. So it is a system game. And
It's if they're
sometimes
willing to succeed.
that's right. There's an assumption that
There's an assumption, yeah.
typically the intent is to succeed. They're in the game, and particularly the ones I work with, I'm called in and I recognize I don't work with everybody. So at the front, you said about athletes. I don't work with athletes. So I have nothing against athlete being one, and you're one, but athletes will try everything. And for me, that defeats the purpose because it's more addition. And they sometimes go around the coach. They don't mean to, but they'll think, hey, that's a good idea. I'll try that. And if they're anything like I used to be. So I work with people who influence athletes, or in business who
Yeah.
have a team. They're influencing and they're decision makers.
But they'll also discover that there's people on their team that will leave. Like we find that you could go into an organization and you could be structural, but there'll be someone in there that kind of goes, I can't take this training, or, there's that doubt, and they will leave because
Yeah.
they don't want to be trained.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're well used to that. Like I said, sport is a transition land, people. And in those instances, they make a decision to say, no, thanks. And the All Blacks used to say, if you can't change the man, change the man. But I think there's a pre to that, which is if you can't change the system, change the man. So I always look at the system first and assume that, you know what, the intent of these people is to do good. And the intent of these people is to perform. It's not happening. And start with the system first and just see if that starts to build belief, like you've said, confidence that comes from the system. You can carry so much from your own background and your own upbringing. But if you're in a system that is dysfunctional, and I've seen it so many times, the star from another place, another team comes in and they operate as dysfunctional as everybody else. The system runs the show.
The system,
And if you can nail the system, it can enhance somebody who looks like they're pulling the chain.
Yeah, and that's, you made me think about politics. People go, "Oh, get rid of that, government, or get rid of that leader, get rid of that, councillor." You may get rid of them, and someone might take their place, but the system is bigger than the people, and in some cases, you have to break the system so the people can function.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
And sometimes it's make the system visible. Because I, from experience, see restructure as a cop-out in many organizations and businesses, that everything hasn't been tried yet. And they're not clear on the system. They're not clear on the core components that are causing resistance, friction, and backlogs here. And we haven't cleared those. And the organizations in sports that have those visible, and then we work on clearing them, the system they thought was broken, and they were going to have a complete top to bottom restructure, change their mind. And realize, you know what? We've layered over layer over layer of good idea. Sports do this all the time. You bring in another winner from somewhere else. They've got good ideas and a compelling argument. You think, we got to try that. Eventually, the core picture of performance is so camouflaged under all these good ideas, it clobbers everybody. And they're all victims of a system. And there's simple ways to make that visible and clear the way.
I think you've given some great questions for people that are listening to the show to actually take note and ask themselves those questions, and also ask those questions of the team. What simple piece of advice would you give to someone who's listening to this?
Yeah. Self-awareness and self-reflection is the key. So if you looked at attributes across the highest performer, it's that, and that they are keeping track personally of what's working and what's not working. So those 6 questions leaders use just to pay attention to what's working for them personally and what do they need to keep, start, and stop in the future, and trying to bridge the gap. So that review process that works in Olympic sport works for one person. It works for us. I use it. And it just keeps me honest about what I think is important. And I can spot clutter. I can spot slow learning. I can spot repeat momentum. I can spot aspects that, wow, that's because so-and-so came in and told me that. And I've tried that. And look, I've been doing that for 3 weeks now. It keeps popping up. And I have no proof that works. Self-awareness and self-reflection using a simple current reality and desired future map.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think as we get older, we understand self-awareness more as well.
Mm-hmm.
just wasted on the young. What did you get wrong to get right?
It probably started way back with my innovative passion for new that overwhelmed, and I thought it was all very hard work. It was the only way to get ahead, but it's smart work. I'm not afraid of hard work. And I was a sprinter as a cyclist, and I couldn't sleep unless I trained 3 times a day. I got into this problem mentality of more is better, and it really wore me down, and it didn't work out for me for the Olympics and a PhD. My first 2 years were a bomb at school because I was just on the bike all the time. And I thought, how can this not work? And so I needed to go through that and have my internal system fall apart to realize that's the core. Your internal system, everything around you can be going wrong, but if your internal system is solid, you can help optimize what's going on around you. And like you said, the respond versus react. So it was that. And then I got into coaching and I realized caring about somebody else changes my attention completely. And then I got focused on what really matters and started to narrow it down. That's what changed.
I think that's to do with passion for something, but also having the discipline to to let your passion take over and destroy everything else. And you see that where, when we had a gym many moons ago, you get the guy or the girl that would come in and they train every day for a month and they're all, this is brilliant, and you'd never see them again. But the person that came in and trained 3 times a week, same time every week, they'd be there for years.
Yeah. My friend in Britain is in a gym, and he said every January they triple the treadmills, the bikes, everything, and at the end of January they pull them all out and they go back to basics because all the New Year's resolution folk have left.
We're creatures, we're strange creatures. We've run out of time, but I do have one question I want to ask you. I think because it's a hot topic at the moment as we move along into the rest of the decade. AI, a lot of people are using AI now for general basic stuff, but AI, if used correctly, can assist in internal processes within an organization. What's your own thoughts within your own industry and the advances of AI and how that is going to be either a hindrance or a harm?
It's an accelerator for sure. I think for novices, it's not. It's just like a Google search. And what I mean is, novice without context and a repertoire of solid experience, everything looks right. And that's when AI is a challenge because it looks like it's giving a solution. I think for experts and the type of people I work with, it's a fantastic prompting tool. It's a fantastic distillation tool. It's a fantastic volume analysis tool. We talked about evidence. Sometimes we've got so much, we just can't get our brain around all of it. AI can help us trim it down to what's going to inform our decisions. I think it's a key support aspect, and that train is moving fast and it's not going anywhere.
Richard, someone wants to buy your books or be able to connect with you to actually come in and talk to them on leadership. How can they do this?
Yeah, so my website is richardnyoung.com or simplify2perform.com. And there's a newsletter I write every week on insights like we've been talking about here, Joe. Both books are on there or they're on Amazon. And then I've got summary papers on evidence and repeated systems and the breakthrough triangle I told you about as well. So there's quite a lot of value on there if people are interested.
There is. If recommend for people to go onto the site and just click on breakthrough, and there's a lot of content there, which great reading, and you'll get some insights from it as well. Richard, thanks for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks for the invite, Joe.
Getting it wrong to get it right.